Right. Hi everyone, I'm really pleased obviously to be in the garden, but more importantly to be joined by the lovely Claire Murray, who is the founding partner of employment law and partnership law specialist firm CM Murray. How are you, Claire?
I'm great, thanks. Lovely. How are you?
I'm okay, enjoying I think what's probably going to be the last proper day of summer, both sort of in the sense of the meteorological calendar, because I think it's the autumn equinox this evening, and I believe the weather is going to drop by, the temperature is going to drop by about 10 degrees.
Well, it's hard to believe because it looks like you've got your own microclimate there, so.
Well, lucky I say. Anyway, so look, we're here obviously to talk about your very, very amazing career history. So why don't you tell me, sort of, let's go to the beginning. How did you end up in law?
Oh my word. Yes, going back a long way. So I'm a child of the 70s. And so in the 70s and 80s, there was some classic law sort of TV shows like Crown Court. Don't know if you remember Crown Court, maybe too old for you.
Oh, I'm more of a law person.
LA Law, exactly, the Paper Chase. So that was kind of my very solid legal education foundation. And then I had an uncle who's a lawyer, who's very self-made, had gone to law school at night while doing a day job, and so that was pretty inspiring. And then my parents sort of encouraged me when I was looking at degrees, and I was always the one in the house who would read the instruction manual on the video recorder. I'd be the first one to read the full instructions. So I think they just thought maybe the life of law was the one for me. And then did a law degree and articles as was. That's sort of how it all started.
How did you find studying law?
I found it, frankly, for the first couple of years, a big mind shift, because I'd been very history, English, French, A-levels. So to kind of go to quite dry law was a big shift. And it was only in my third year when things just sort of fell into place. So I did like European law, and I did some French civil law, and it just I kind of got it. So I went from being a very average student in the first and second year to in the third year, all of a sudden the penny dropped, and my tutors were frankly astonished, because I kind of came from nowhere to somewhere by the end of the third year.
I agree with you. I think for me, again, I found law as a degree quite a big step up from having done A-levels, where you're pretty much spoon-fed a lot of information. So it wasn't just the subject matter, but it was also the way you're taught at degree level. And at what point did you decide between solicitor and barrister?
So I'm from the Northeast, and I am from sort of good working class, my parents are teachers, and so I'm not part of that world of privilege, and so I do remember going to as a law student to one of the halls of Inns of Court, so the dinners, and literally, I mean, it was like going to something out of Hogwarts, frankly, and it just felt so removed from me and my personal experience that I didn't feel comfortable there. And I think they tried to lock us in for 2 hours or something, and I was like, I'm not having any of this, into this dinner. And so then I just sort of naturally gravitated to the solicitor side of it, and it's really suited me. I really like the collaborative aspects of being in a law firm and, being part of a bigger team.
No, I think that's one of the big differences, that perhaps students deciding between the two don't really appreciate that. As a barrister, it can be quite a lonely existence.
Yeah, even within chambers, I think you're still, an individual practitioner working alongside other individual practitioners. So
interesting. You also said that having gone to one of these dinners in the Inns of Court, that you almost ruled yourself out of doing that because you felt that you wouldn't, because of your background.
I know, crazy, right?
Yeah. What would you say to students or trainee solicitors listening to this interview who themselves
be more open-minded than I was. Mine was a very visceral reaction. And probably I was too quick to judge, and probably, I mean, there have been times that I've thought on reflection, you know what, people who I know from similar backgrounds have gone to the bar and have loved it and have flourished. So yeah, you have to keep an open mind. I think I was too quick to judge. But having said that, I am very happy with the decisions and the choices that I made, and they feel right for me.
So what next? You did your articles, as they were then called.
Yeah.
And how has your sort of career progressed, and what led you, I guess, to set up your own law firm?
Oh, that's about 27 years in 3 sentences. So basically, I qualified. I had a couple of options: international tax or employment law, and I was at a firm called Jakes and Lewis, which was, I don't know if you remember, the precursor to Eversheds London. So it became Eversheds London. I was there a few years, and then I went to a fabulous firm called Fox Williams, which was very employment focused, and I had an amazing mentor in managing partner. And so, you know, there I learned how to build a practice and a profile, and learned to really love what I was doing. And I developed partnership laws and additional expertise. And so, you know, having built on the great training I'd had at Eversheds, I then had kind of more profile and practice building and financial management training at Fox Williams. And then when I was about 32, 33, I'd been made a partner at about 30. And 32, I don't know if I've told you this actually. So I had breast cancer. And so that took, you know, a good sort of 9 months out of my life with surgery and chemo and whatever. And that just, having really absolutely, you know, worked incredibly hard for, you know, ever since I just worked incredibly hard. I just wanted some time for myself. So I recovered, went back to work, and then I decided to take a year off. And it was in that year off that I thought, well, do I go back to law at all? If I do, is that back to a medium size or a big firm or an American firm? Or actually, is it doing something for myself, which is more on my terms? And then I had some encouragement to sort of from some friends to set up the firm. Yeah, so we did that about 14 years ago, and I had a couple of friends who came and joined me. And yeah, I mean, it was, you know, we were in charge of our own destiny and our own mistakes, and it was really, 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 really hard work, and frankly still is. But at least you sort of own it yourself in every sense, you know.
How did you get through the sort of health setback? I mean, to do that and then to get to where you've got to is pretty exceptional.
Well, in some ways it was a bit of a blessing, actually. It was almost like an intervention, because I really had been working hard. I'd been very focused and very ambitious, and I'd been very supported in doing everything. But I think there was no balance in my life. And so being ill gave me that perspective. And, you know, I'd never had a year off. I'd never sort of had a gap year or anything. So actually, you know, I kind of very consciously took a year off, and had an amazing time. And then that just allowed me to reset, because I'd been on this sort of a treadmill. It was a very nice, well-paid treadmill, but it was like a treadmill where you're just doing the next thing that's expected, without actually thinking about your own purpose and what it is you want.
What advice would you give to others on that treadmill or roller coaster, or, you know, because what I recently wrote a blog about how the associate lockstep makes life quite easy for lawyers, because if you're almost guaranteed to be just progressing to the next stage every year and you get a related pay rise, then it doesn't require much attention from your part to plan your career, because it's almost written out for you.
Yeah, so I think one of the problems with the associate lockstep is that sometimes it goes up and then you just drop off the other end, because there's not been thought or enough engagement to allow you to build your own profile and your own practice, to actually take you off that treadmill and bounce you, frankly, onto the next one, which is getting to the bottom of the partner, ladder upwards, which, is a whole different story in itself. But I really think it's important for associates to lift their heads off the desk. They will have a lot of work to do, but also they have to, whichever type of firm they're in, but particularly if they're in a very large firm where it's hard to stand out, I think they have to think about their own visibility internally and externally, with their internal market within the firm, really kind of building allegiances, alliances, and finding mentors who can help you through. And also in the outside world, being on social media, being super, super networked. When we see the other end of the scale, and when we see sort of we're acting, say, for partners who are exiting, and there maybe won't be one particular thing that's happened, but it might they just don't fit anymore, or they've fallen out of favor. And you say to them, so who are your allies? Who can you call on to, really speak for you and to stand up for you? And as soon as they say, oh, well, kind of my mentor's retired and I guess I fell out with X, and that this is just a one-way track now, we're leaving. Yeah. Because it's those, whether you're an associate or a partner or a trainee, or even before trainee, it's about your networks and your allies. Who's going to speak up for you and who's going to support you throughout your career?
I agree. Talking of support and allies, who has influenced your sort of career choices and your sort of progression through the ranks? If you had to single out an individual or someone you thank personally.
Oh, no, absolutely. So firstly, my mum and dad, obviously, they were the one who pushed me in the direction of the law degree in the first place. Then Elaine Aarons, who was head of employment at Jakes & Lewis Eversheds and was my partner and supervisor and all that sort of thing, and was very inspiring and dynamic and outward looking. And then Ronnie Fox at Fox Williams, who's the managing partner there, again, helped me sort of to look outwards and build a vision, etc. And then since then, there've been, the partners that I have in our firm, and some of the previous partners as well have just been, like there are times when you just think, I can't do this. I just can't do this. And they'll go, no, you can. So for example, I was asked to give evidence at the Women and Equality Select Committee on sexual harassment in the workplace as an expert witness. And I was like, there's literally no way I can do that. I'm absolutely terrified. And one of my former colleagues, Anna Birtwistle, said to me, of course you can do it. You can do it. I'll come with you and it'll be fine. And so having her like that sort of support was incredible. And then they asked me to be their specialist advisor to the select committee. And so that, and it was like, it's one of those, it's those little points in your lives when you could bottle it, and like going into that dining hall and I bottled it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it turned out right for me, but I could have bottled it and not, but it's having the support around you to go, no, you can do that. Go on, give it a shot.
And at what point did you decide your practice area? Because another limiting factor about law is that you have to choose your practice area at such a junior level, what's slightly pigeonholed into that area, and any shift towards other areas of expertise can be quite a gradual process. It's possible at all. And I know that you started with employment and then built into sort of your knowledge on sort of partnership law, etc. How did you go about deciding?
Well, I just had a great training contract, and I had a great seat in employment. I really enjoyed it. So that was a natural progression there. And it's like the law and the humanity and the tactics, and it's it's the stuff of real life. And then partnership, I kind of moved, but I moved very consciously to affirm that and to work for someone who specialized in employment and partnership. So it was a very conscious decision on my part. and it gave me a sort of a, you know, a USP. And in a world where there are so many people who do what you do, actually finding a USP is quite important.
Agreed. I think that, you know, it relates very closely to that sort of personal brand point. You know, how are you going to differentiate yourself from other lawyers who specialize in that practice area? Because the law can, you know, that bit is quite homogenous. So if you can find something that plays to your strengths, I guess.
Yeah, be super specialist.
Yeah.
So we did it by also our firm, you know, we're a niche firm, about 18 lawyers, but we're very focused on cross-border matters. So employment for us is like this perfect triangle of employment with partnership and cross-border. And, you know, we know what we do, whether it's litigation or structuring or whatever, it's kind of fits within that triangle.
And there obviously are, hopefully there'll be lots of junior lawyers listening in on this, and what's quite interesting is that you mentioned earlier, you know, you volunteered this, that you had made mistakes. How do you, you know, what lessons have you learned from sort of some of the, because I think we all make career mistakes. My mistake was joining a legal recruitment agency without really knowing what legal recruitment is about. I hated every minute that I was in that agency, but the lessons I learned from that is what gave me the confidence to go off and set up my own consultancy.
Yeah. So I think two things from that. I think all the best stuff that I've learned in my career, I've learned from my mistakes. And, you know, kind of refinements in the advice that we give and the tactics that we adopt in a matter are all learned from doing it the wrong way previously. And they might just be small things, but it just, you know, you do it so many times, you learn the different angles and the different, so that I think kind of as a lawyer, it's important to make mistakes, and it's important to own them and kind of own up to them immediately and to the fullest extent. I have known people before who try and cover them up. And that literally, as the first thing that I was taught as a trainee was, you fess up to your mistakes straight away so that they can be managed, because there is very little that can't be managed. It'll seem awful to you as a junior lawyer. It'll feel the end of the world, but actually we've all made mistakes and we've all moved on and progressed. And you will learn from them. I think that's really important. Yeah. The only other thing I would add, just as a final thing, is people who haven't made mistakes, haven't learned anything, and don't know how to recover. So I actually ask people, you know, like an interview, spoiler alert, is you know, what have you failed at? And you get some people who go, so, you know, that's, you know, kind of what's their resilience for making mistakes? Because you will make them and you need to learn from them and bounce back.
And what about the point of making a mistake, the common trait that so many lawyers have, which is this pursuit for perfectionism? What advice do you have for them?
You have to be perfect. I mean, I am sorry, but we have to try to be perfect. But we have to do our professional best, without question. I would say that we should try to get it 100% right every time, but it is inevitable that occasionally, sometimes for reasons outside your control, things may not go right. They may not be, you know, there might be a problem of some sort or another, but there are rarely things that can't be salvaged in one way or another. But it's human to make mistakes.
And whilst we're on skills, what skill or attribute do you wish you excelled at during your sort of formative years as a lawyer?
Or professional skill?
It could be life or professional.
Professional skill. I wish I'd been, well, no, I think I wish I'd been a bit kinder to myself and kind of just gone, oh wow, actually that's really good, you know, instead of just being constantly looking forward and forward. Skills wise, I wish I'd kept up my tango lessons. I mean, I did those for a few months. I really liked that, and you know, would have come into my own. Some languages as well. Yeah, definitely language. Sorry, to be kind of serious from it. Languages, relevant business languages, I think. Nowadays, Mandarin be amazing. My daughter's learning Mandarin. She loves it. Relevant business languages. Coding now, I think, would be an amazing thing to have. I think for young lawyers especially. Yeah.
And in one of the things that I have to ask you, being a female lawyer, and you mentioned being kind to yourself, do you think that female lawyers are more inclined to be unkind to themselves? Do you think that's a sort of a trait that seems to prevail more in the sort of better sex, should I say? Probably not.
Are we? I don't know. I honestly think it varies just from person to person. Some people are just very driven and focused, and others are just much more relaxed. And it may well be that women, when they have families, may have more childcare responsibilities, and they'll have a sense of having to balance more. Although there are lots of male lawyers who are really involved in family responsibilities too. So I think it's more shared, but not as shared as it should be.
Yeah.
I can't say that because I've got an amazing husband who, really participates. So I'm very lucky.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I mentioned it because I too was probably a bit too unkind to myself, because I'd set myself potentially unrealistic targets because I wanted to prove that as a female I would be better than my sort of male colleagues. But I think that's my issue rather than generally something that women are having to deal with.
I don't know. I mean, because the men are setting themselves those targets as well. So why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we have the same, if not higher, aspirations than the guy in the desk next door? I don't know.
Okay. And how have you found it in sort of lockdown over the past 6 months? Because, just as everyone was preparing to return to work, albeit on a voluntary basis or on a part-time basis, the advice has changed again, which is work from home if you can.
So how have I found it? So my husband, I was discussing it with him last night, and he said that I've worked harder since I've been at home. I mean, I've been with the family more, as we all have, which is really nice. There's been a lot of stress, the existing workload, and we've had to pivot the firm to remote working very quickly. There are there are challenges around sort of making sure that the work is done really well, that the team is supervised, that all the relationships are maintained, and that we're as visible as ever. So those are, those existing pressures are magnified. But it's been lovely having just more time at home with the family.
And what advice would you give to junior lawyers who perhaps miss that interaction with their senior colleagues? I know when I was a trainee, I learned so much by watching and listening to the partners I shared offices with, and that was the whole reason why law firms set their teams up in that way, that you have your shared office.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's a whole piece about, as you say, that osmosis of learning just by being right next to a more senior lawyer and learning from them, being thoroughly involved. We do try and involve our lawyers remotely as much as possible, but it takes more effort on their part to stay visible and available for those calls and the Zoom video conference, etc. I also think from the partner's perspective, it's really hard to, it's part of our job to motivate and inspire the next generation of lawyers and beyond. And actually, it's really hard to do that remotely. I think it is quite hard to, there's like an energy from being in a room with someone, you know what I mean? Because you're really good at kind of interpersonal, that energy sort of that you get in a conversation. And that's much harder to convey and maintain in this kind of virtual chat. And yeah.
Agreed. So what's keeping you busy at the moment? I know the work you do is very sensitive. So without naming names or anything, what's sort of in your inbox at the moment?
Yeah, we've got lots of partner behavioural issues going on at the minute. So we've been involved in a number of investigations which specifically relate to allegations about partner behaviour, sexual harassment, bullying, and that's what we do back to back as a firm. We've got, across the entire team, we do a lot of that work. Team moves, we love a team move, especially across borders, restrictive covenants, and then we've got this fabulous partnership M&A team that we brought in, two senior lawyers who are brilliant, and so they're really driving that and doing very well and bringing in really interesting new work on the sort of partnership M&A side. So yeah, it's great.
Can you again, just for our very, very junior sort of viewers and students who are potentially thinking of training as solicitors, can you give us some basic background on how law firms work?
How law firms work?
Yes, please.
Oh, my word.
I wish I'd known that, when phrases like PEP get fired at me, or organisation.
I suppose the most important thing to know about a law firm that I don't think I realised at law school is that, like, as fascinating as the law is as an exercise, as an academic pursuit, a law firm is a business, and what we are selling is our knowledge and judgment. So clients they're not interested in cases. They're interested in the application of specific distilled principles in their scenario and how you give them a range of options. Oh, sorry, that's my phone. So they're interested in, how you give them a range of options, range of their legal risks and their legal and commercial options. And that's what a law firm is about. It's about being a business which sells legal services. Now, within that, there is some really important public interest work that a lot of firms do. So they'll do pro bono work, they'll do CSR activities. So it is really important for law firms to have a kind of a social purpose as well. But it is business, and it's a business which requires people to go out and generate that business. That's the partners, usually, but the associates are expected to be developing their networks and their profiles so that one day you will build a practice and be able to generate work that you can then share and supervise with your associates and trainees, etc. There's no right to anything. There's no entitlement. You really have to work. Unfortunately, as a lawyer, you work really hard. What we sell is our time. The starting point. So it means that if you've got that, if you're in a firm that has that approach, as most firms do, it means you're going to be working hard. And you're doing a complex subject, and you're often dealing with huge problems that affect people's businesses or their lives. So there are tremendous stresses. Other people's problems or opportunities become yours.
Great. Okay. And what next for Claire Murray?
That's a really good question. So, we want to take our firm, we're in a big growth stage. So we are very keen on sort of expanding the team further, extending the profile further. We have around 10, 11 associates and senior consultants. So it's really helping them to develop, trying to inspire and motivate them to build their own practices and help the whole thing grow bigger. And I think for me personally, just to try and get a bit more balance and enjoy it, maybe a little bit more than sometimes I have, because I've been just so focused, so driven, that actually you do sometimes forget to go, that was good, right? We did good. We did something that was significant or helpful to someone, or, you know, we were successful. And you sort of have to remind yourself to enjoy it.
No, that's, you know, just pausing and reflecting and celebrating success is just as important as pushing yourself to sort of flourish and try harder. Anyway, Claire, that's all we've got time for. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, really interesting. And thank you for being so open as well about sort of your health, and the tips you shared, I'm sure will, you know, support lots of our followers. And I wish you all the best for the rest of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Lovely to speak. Take care.